Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. As a segue to my presentation, I'd like to reiterate maybe a few words that we heard throughout today relating to the outcome measurement framework. So we heard the words journey, and actually the title of our presentation has the word journey, measurement, impact, power of data, value of money. So this is the story of our, I would say, outcome measurement involvement. And also what I take away from today is a few words or a few themes that I have heard throughout the day. So first, there's the context, which Kathy's fishbowl shows beautifully well. We are all in it together. There are different players, different stakeholders. We all have the same interest in doing that outcome measurement, but there are some things that distinguish us. One of them is capacity, obviously, which also Kathy touched base on. But it's also about creating capacity with limited resources, which is something that I'll be talking to you about. And in my opinion, there's also communication internal within the agency as to how we can create that capacity in line with our ability, resources, and whatnot. And then, of course, external, how we communicate with funders, with other people who are in that fishbowl, and how do we dance the dance well rehearsed and well prepared. So in that context, what I'll be talking about is our approach to outcome measurement framework, and some examples of how we have created a certain level of capacity with very limited resources, like all the other agencies have. So our approach to outcome measurement is, there is the micro outcome measurement that we do for funders. But that's only a fraction of our outcome measurement framework. The macro concept is obviously, and in my opinion, has to be related to we have to own it. So what do we connect it with? We connect it with outcome measurement, with the strategic plan for the agency, so that we can measure our impact and use the outcomes that we deliver to funders, each funder at a time, and in line with the programs that they fund. But ultimately, we need to take advantage of creating our ability to measure impact that we do as the agency on the community that we live in. So this is how it works in our case. So I'll skip a few. Those are our mandate, and you all know that CIVA is in Calgary, obviously, and we are the biggest settlement agency with gender-specific focus in Canada. So this is micro versus macro approach to outcome measurement. So our concept is outcome measurement really starts with the RFP rather than the approval of funding. So where we align our, and I'll be going in details about it, where we align our mandate with what the RFP is about, so that we know that we should be applying for something, not because there is the RFP, but because it is our mandate and we have good capacity to deliver work in that area. Then we move to application process, which is alignment with funder logic model and and the unique needs of our population. And then if we are approved, when we are approved, we go to program implementation, which is preparing our staff to adequately deliver programs, but also to adequately measure outcomes. And then there is reporting on outcomes that we do, like I mentioned, to the funders. But then how those programs flow into our strategic priorities, and how then, based on that, we can measure overall impact on our work. And then the last point is not really completing the circle, but this should be going out into the skies, which is based on that impact, we assess credibility of our work and our ability to ask for more money, to create more effective programs. We base it on our experiences and on our ability to prove the change that our programs have made. So, assessment. So when a request for proposals comes to CIVA, we look into three things. Reviewing client needs in relation to the funding opportunity, ensuring correlation of funding opportunity and CIVA strategies. If there is a correlation, we apply. If there isn't, we don't apply. There might be another agency that could do a better job with that particular RFP. And then we have to match proposal with one of core service areas at SIVA and the strategic plan. So it needs to align with clients, and so there is the client in the middle, there is the funder RFP, there is the service area alignment with SIVA, and then there is alignment with agency strategy. So then, as for the application, so this is those are our strategic plan, 5-year strategic plan, 17-22. We are in the middle of the 5-year strategic plan. So this is where all the programs in priority number 2 and number 5, all the programs fall into those 2 priorities. The rest is agency capacity and internal alignment. So if we get the approval, we go into program implementation. So there are 2 things that we have to do before we recruit clients. Not before we hire staff. We hire staff and then so we create outcome measurement framework for each program that we receive funding from. Doesn't matter whether it's IRCC. IRCC is our biggest funder, or any other funder. So it's logic model, work plan, evaluation plan, and evaluation tools. When we hire, if it's a new project, we hire staff to deliver that project, but we then train staff on the logic model, work plan, and evaluation tools, so that they know what they're supposed to do in terms of outcome measurement framework and why they're supposed to do that. How to collect data, how to enter into the iCare, into our database. So this is an example of SIVA logic model. So it's a unique logic model. You know that many funders have, the IRCC have their logic model, Government of Alberta have their logic model that we receive to align with. But ultimately, once we receive the funding, the only logic model that we actually follow is SIVA logic model. It looks the same way for all the programs, disregarding of which funder funds that. That's because we align all the programs with our strategic plan. So this is an example of the work plan that we provide, that typically we work with the staff who will be working on that project to create all those documents. So here's the program evaluation plan that fully responds to all the components of any individual program and funding. And then our evaluation tools typically would be client surveys, focus group discussions, client assessments, 3 and 6 months follow-up, and partner feedback, a combination of a minimum of 3 of those, most frequent, all 5. So then we report on outcomes through 2 distinct, and this is where micro and macro come in. So we capture activities and outcomes, and we enter them into SIVA database, and then database of the funder that we are reporting to. So the big information sits in SIVA client management system. I gave an example of IRCC iCare. So we transfer to iCare what iCare wants us to transfer, and a little bit more because iCare requires, as you all know, output. So, for example, we would enter all our outcomes that we would like to bring IRCC's attention to in the section of the iCare that's called conclusion, I believe. So we give them the outcomes because it's very hard to report outcomes currently in the iCare. But much more information, there's much more information in SIVA CMS client management system than it is in any of the funders' database that we extract information from our CMS. So program outputs and outcomes are reported to funders in line with reporting requirements. Activities for all programs at SIVA are reported monthly by all staff in line with SIVA's strategic plan. So the flow of communication goes to satisfy strategic plan, not individual funders. And that, we believe, is the unique approach to that limited capacity that we have generated to support. So basically, all program staff have a role in reporting outcomes because we train them before they start working for us. So, and they look very similar. You will see, I'll give you an example, is because they all flow to the agency strategic plan. So frontline staff report to coordinators, coordinators report to managers, managers report to director of programs reports to CEO, CEO reports to the board. We all report about one thing, strategic plan. So this is an example of frontline staff report. It relates to their program, and all programs are connected to the strategic priorities at CEVA. There is not one program at CEVA that doesn't have direct connection with one of the priorities. So here's coordinator's report template, and we generate templates. There is no such thing as one coordinator saying, oh, I'd like to report on this, and another, no. It's a CEVA report, it's CEVA strategic plan, and it's CEVA program. Managers report to director of programs. Again, very similar color coding, everything in line with the director of programs reports to me. And then here's what I report to the board about, strategic priorities. So at the end of each year, I call it annual business plan follow-up. Obviously, business plan, once we agree on the strategic plan, I create the business plan, which is the implementation of the strategic plan for the 5-year period, with all the implementation activities and components for each of the strategic priorities. So that is what, obviously, we report on the implementation, not on the direction. So at the end of each year, I do the annual follow-up report on all the strategic priorities for that particular year, which would include all the programs, including IRCCs. And then I report to the board, I report to the senior management team, I report to the management team, and I report back to the staff at the all-staff meeting about the outcomes that we all have collectively achieved. And at that time, we frequently hear questions, and we have a few coordinators from CEVA here. People who work in programs sometimes are surprised at what they have achieved in relation to the strategic priorities, because there is the big context and there is the small context, and it helps everybody to know how they do their work for the program, how they report to the funders, but also how they actually support the agency's strategic plan and impact. So then our strategic plans are for 5-year periods in the last in the last decade or so. So at the end of the 5-year strategic plan, we summarize the 5 annual follow-ups to create a strategic plan impact after 5 years for each of the priorities and for each of the programs. Everything can go back retroactively to that staff report in any given year of the 5-year strategic plan. And then we file that as the reference to create new programs, to talk to the funders about the impact that we have achieved, to identify how different programs have been very well matched to the needs of the immigrant population and all those things. So I'll give you an example. So I'll go back now to the example of that 5-year community impact measurement. The previous strategic plan was for the period 2012 to 2017. So this is an example of the impact that we created in 5 years for the strategic priorities relating to equitable employment for professional immigrant women and for low literacy. So we have 2 service departments that support employment of immigrant women. One is called Career Services Department that serves well-educated professional immigrant women in matching them with equitable jobs in Canada. And the other one is Workplace Services Department that serves immigrant women with low to, I'll be done in 1 minute, middle literacy, with the employment opportunities and in line with their training and their aspirations. We happen to have exactly the same number of programs in both departments. So we have entered for the period 12-17, how many clients we served, the investment for the career services funding for the 5-year period, percentage of employment, all the way to the social return on investment. The same on the side of the low to middle literacy immigrant women. So that's the data, that's the information that we own. Every single information from this slide can be traced back into any year of service for the period 12 to 17. And then we can go back to the reports by the CEO, by the management that corroborate the information relating to this. So now back to that last component, what happens? So once we do, and we have it for all the programs and for all the priorities in the previous 5-year plan, and we are doing it for this year. So that creates new opportunities that are based on our experiences and based on the best practices that we have. So that's my presentation, and I would like to say that we are very happy to share our resources with anybody who is interested in that. So that goes back to that communication. If we communicate better with each other, maybe we could be a little bit richer for the experiences and for sharing of those resources. Thank you.